Hello. Tonight, our journey takes us not outward to the distant stars, but downward, into the most mysterious and inaccessible wilderness on our own planet, the deep ocean. It is a world without sunlight, a kingdom of immense pressure and profound stillness, a place so alien and so challenging that we have mapped the surface of Mars with greater detail than we have our own seafloor. We are voyaging into the last true terra incognita of our home world, a place of quiet, hidden truths, and breathtakingly strange beauty. Before we begin our slow descent into the abyss, I would love to know where in the world this story is finding you tonight. Are you listening from a place near the coast, where the sound of the waves is a familiar comfort, or from deep inland, where the ocean is a distant, sleeping giant? It is a quiet delight to imagine this constellation of listeners, all connected for a time by a shared sense of curiosity about the blue heart of our planet. If this journey helps you find a moment of peace or gently sparks your imagination, a simple like and a subscription would be sincerely appreciated. And to those who have already joined this exploration, thank you. You are the quiet gravity that helps hold this little corner of the universe together. I will do my very best not to make the crushing dark of the abyss too unsettling to drift off to. But if your thoughts do linger in its silent depths a little longer, at least you will fall asleep with a mind full of bioluminescent light, strange and ghostly creatures, and a deeper respect for the quiet power our own planet holds in its deepest chambers. So, let us take a slow, deep breath and begin our descent. Why, on our own blue planet, does a kingdom of utter mystery still remain just beyond our reach? Our planet, from the cold and silent vantage point of space, is a blue marble. It is a world defined by its water. The oceans cover more than 70% of its surface, and in their depths, they hold the greatest mysteries, the strangest life, and the most extreme environments that our world has to offer. For all our ambition to reach for the stars, it is a humbling and profound truth that we know less about the floor of our own oceans than we do about the surface of the moon. More people have stood on the lunar dust, 250,000 miles away, than have ever visited the deepest point of our own seas, a mere 7 miles beneath the waves. This is the great and beautiful paradox of human exploration. We have cast our eyes and our machines to the very edge of the solar system, yet the world beneath our own feet remains, for the most part, a secret. Our journey into this secret world is a descent through layers, a slow and gentle peeling back of the familiar until nothing of our sunlit world remains. It begins in the epipelagic zone, the surface layer, which stretches from the sun-kissed waves down to about 200 meters. This is the ocean we know and love, the world of coral reefs, of playful dolphins, of schools of vibrant fish, and of the vast, invisible meadows of phytoplankton that turn sunlight into life. Photosynthesis thrives here, and this realm is the engine of the entire marine biosphere. It is a world of light, of color, and of constant, energetic motion. But as we sink deeper, this familiar world begins to fade. Passing the 200-meter mark, we enter the mesopelagic zone, better known as the twilight zone. Here, from 200 down to 1,000 meters, the last vestiges of sunlight are strained to their absolute limit. The vibrant blues of the surface give way to a deep, perpetual indigo. The light is too faint for photosynthesis, and the plants vanish, leaving a world of quiet, hungry predators and scavengers. It is in this dusky realm that the ocean begins to reveal its stranger secrets. Life here has learned to make its own light. This is the world of bioluminescence. Creatures pulse with their own cold chemical fire, ethereal jellyfish drift like living chandeliers, and deep-sea fish use glowing lures to attract their prey in the permanent dusk. It is a silent, endless light show, a galaxy of living stars in the deep. We continue our descent, leaving the last ghosts of sunlight behind us. Beyond 1,000 meters, we enter the bathypelagic zone. The midnight zone. Here, there is no light at all, save for the occasional flicker of a bioluminescent creature. The darkness is absolute, a blackness so profound and so complete it feels like a physical presence. The temperature of the water plummets, hovering just a few degrees above freezing, and it will stay that way for the rest of our journey down. The pressure here is already immense, dozens of times greater than at the surface, a steady and relentless squeeze. Life becomes slower, stranger. The fish are often black or red, colors that are invisible in the absence of light, and they have developed huge mouths and distensible stomachs to take advantage of any rare and precious meal that drifts down from the world above. Deeper still, at 4,000 meters, we reach the abyssal zone The name itself evokes a sense of infinite, cold emptiness, and in many ways, it is true. The abyss is composed of vast, flat, and featureless plains of fine mud that stretch for thousands of kilometers, a great, dark desert at the bottom of the world. Life here is sparse, and the creatures that survive are masters of endurance, living their lives at a geological pace, waiting for the gentle snow of marine snow, the constant, slow rain of organic debris from the waters far, far above, to provide their only source of nourishment. The pressure here is crushing, hundreds of times that of the surface, enough to implode a military submarine. Yet even this is not the end of the journey. This is not the deepest the ocean has to offer, for beyond the great and lonely plains of the abyss lies a final, fragmented, and profoundly alien realm. The Hadal Zone named for Hades, the Greek underworld. This zone is not a single continuous layer, but a collection of the deepest and most isolated places on Earth. It exists only in the world's great oceanic trenches, those deep, V-shaped scars in the seafloor that form where one tectonic plate is being forced beneath another. These trenches plunge from 6,000 meters down to the very bottom of the sea, almost 11,000 meters at their deepest point. The Hadal Zone is a world apart, a collection of isolated, high-pressure islands of life, a place of almost unimaginable extremes, and the final destination of our long and quiet descent. It is here, in these dark and forgotten wounds of the earth, that the true challenge of ocean exploration begins. To enter the Hadal Zone is to leave the familiar map of the world behind. Unlike the vast, contiguous plains of the abyssal seafloor, which make up a huge portion of our planet's surface, the Hadal Zone is a rare and fragmented geography. It is composed of 46 distinct habitats that we know of, mostly deep-sea trenches and a few other deep troughs, scattered across the globe. Though they represent over 40% of the ocean's total depth range, their cumulative area is tiny, making up less than 0.25% of the entire sea floor. These are not continents of depth. They are isolated canyons, thin and lonely wounds in the Earth's crust. Each trench is a world unto itself, a steep, V-shaped chasm carved by the slow and relentless violence of plate tectonics. They are born at subduction zones, the places where one great oceanic plate meets another, and is forced to bend and plunge downwards into the hot mantle of the earth. As the plate descends, it drags the seafloor with it, creating a deep, narrow, and incredibly steep-sided valley. These are some of the most geologically active places on our planet, frequently shaken by the world's most powerful earthquakes and serving as the birthplace for tsunamis. They are not quiet, stable basins, but dynamic, ever-changing landscapes, constantly being sculpted by the immense forces that move continents. Among these great, deep scars, one holds a special and almost mythic status. the Mariana Trench, located in the western Pacific Ocean to the east of the Mariana Islands. This crescent-shaped trench is home to the deepest known point on planet Earth. This specific, legendary spot is named Challenger Deep ****. It is a small, relatively flat-bottomed basin within the southern end of the trench, a slot canyon at the bottom of the world, and it is here that our planet guards its most profound secrets of pressure and darkness. The name itself, Challenger, is a legacy of human curiosity. It comes from the HMS Challenger, a British Royal Navy ship that undertook one of the first great global oceanographic expeditions in the 1,870 seconds. During their long and arduous voyage, the crew of the Challenger performed the first soundings in the area, dropping a weighted line hundreds of times, and discovered the astonishing depth of this region. They did not find the deepest point, but they revealed the existence of a chasm far deeper than anyone had ever imagined. They had found the entrance to the underworld. Today, after more than a century of further exploration, and with the aid of our most sophisticated technologies, we have a much clearer picture of Challenger Deep. Modern measurements, derived from high-precision pressure sensors carried by submersibles, place its maximum depth at approximately ***10,000. 935 meters or just under 11 kilometers, which is almost 7 miles. To put this into perspective, if you were to place Mount Everest, the highest point on Earth, into Challenger Deep, its summit would still be submerged with more than 2 kilometers of water pressing down above it. You could hide an entire mountain range in this single dark slot in the ocean floor. But here is where the beautiful and quiet uncertainty of deep-sea science begins to reveal itself. That number, 10,935 meters, is not a final, absolute truth. It comes with a caveat, a humble admission of the immense difficulty of measuring such a place, a margin of error of plus or minus 6 meters. We have sent probes to the outer edges of the solar system and can calculate their positions with astonishing precision. Yet for the very deepest point on our own planet, our best and most recent answer is still a range. This is because the ocean itself, in its deepness, conspires against simple measurement. The physics of water at such extremes is a subtle and complex adversary. Sound, our primary tool for mapping the seafloor from the surface, does not travel in a straight line. It bends and curves as it passes through layers of water with different temperatures, pressures, and salinities. A sonar beam sent from a ship at the surface must travel for over 7 seconds to reach the bottom and return, and during that long journey, its path is warped in ways that are incredibly difficult to predict perfectly. Even pressure readings from a submersible on the seafloor, which are more direct, come with their own beautiful set of challenges. To convert a pressure measurement into a geometric depth requires a perfect knowledge of the density of every layer of water above it, and it requires correcting for the subtle local variations in Earth's own gravitational field. The deepest point on Earth is not a static number on a map. It is a moving target for our instruments, a value that shifts and refines with every new method, every new correction, every new and more humble understanding of the physics of the deep. The geography of Challenger Deep itself is a complex and labyrinthine world. It is not a single, simple whole. Multi-beam sonar has revealed that it is composed of at least 3 distinct basins, a western, central, and eastern pool, each one plunging to a depth of over 10,850 meters. These basins are separated by subtle underwater ridges, saddles of rock just a few hundred meters higher than the surrounding floor. The very deepest spot, the point we call the bottom of the world, likely lies within the eastern basin, but the western basin's depth falls within the range of our measurement uncertainty. We are not even entirely certain which of these 3 quiet pools holds the final record. The landscape is steep, dynamic, and unstable. Earthquakes, common in this tectonically active zone, can trigger immense underwater landslides or turbidity currents that race down the trench walls, carrying avalanches of sediment that can reshape the seafloor in an instant and bury any instruments we have placed there. This is a world that does not just resist observation. At times, it actively erases our attempts to study it. This, then, is our destination, a place of almost mythic depth, of crushing pressure, and of profound and beautiful scientific uncertainty. It is a small, quiet, and profoundly lonely slot canyon at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, a place that embodies the very limit of our planet and the very frontier of our own human capacity to explore. To descend into the Hadal Zone is to enter a world where the laws of physics, as we know them on the surface, begin to take on a new and unforgiving character. The most dominant and defining force in this realm is not darkness nor cold, but pressure. It is a force so immense, so constant, and so pervasive that it has shaped every aspect of this hidden world, from its geology to its biology, and it presents the single greatest and most humbling challenge to our own exploration. Let us think of pressure in a gentle and intuitive way. Here on the surface, we live at the bottom of an ocean of air. The weight of all that air pressing down upon us is what we call one atmosphere of pressure. Our bodies are perfectly adapted to it. We do not even feel it. But as we descend into the ocean, we add the immense weight of the water column above us, and water is nearly 800 times denser than air. As a rule of thumb, for every 10 meters we descend, the pressure increases by 1 additional atmosphere. Down in the twilight zone, at a depth of 1,000 meters, the pressure is already a staggering 100 atmospheres. But we are only just beginning. In the abyssal zone, at 4,000 meters, the pressure is 400 times that of the surface, and as we finally drift into Challenger Deep, at a depth of nearly 11,000 meters, the pressure reaches a truly unimaginable figure, approximately **1,100 atmospheres, or over 16,000 pounds per square inch. To put that into perspective, the pressure at the bottom of the Mariana Trench is the equivalent of having the weight of a large elephant balanced on every square inch of a surface. It is a force that does not just push, it crushes, seeking out the smallest imperfection, the slightest weakness, with a relentless and patient power. It is a force that would not just flatten a human body, but would cause it to instantly and completely implode. It is this crushing force that has, for so long, made the deep ocean a fortress, a place more inaccessible to us than the vacuum of space. The challenges of building a vessel that can survive this pressure are monumental. Any submersible destined for the Hadal Zone must be a perfect sphere of immense strength, for a sphere is the only geometric shape that distributes such an immense and uniform external pressure evenly across its surface. The slightest imperfection in its roundness, the smallest flaw in its material, could become a catastrophic weak point, a place for the pressure to focus its immense energy and initiate a collapse. The materials themselves are pushed to their absolute limits. Titanium alloys, renowned for their incredible strength-to-weight ratio, are the material of choice for the crew spheres of our most advanced submersibles. The hull of a vehicle like the limiting factor, which has made multiple journeys to Challenger Deep, is a titanium sphere with walls that are 90 millimeters, or over 3.5 inches thick, and it is machined to a standard of near-perfect sphericity, a tolerance of over 99.9%, because in this realm, the smallest geometric error can erode the margin of safety. Even the simple act of looking out a window becomes an extraordinary engineering challenge. Viewports must be made of incredibly thick, conical pieces of acrylic, their funnel-like shape designed to use the water pressure itself to press them more tightly into their frames. But with increasing depth, these windows must become smaller and thicker, until the grand vista of the ocean is reduced to a small, precious, and tunnel-like porthole into the dark. At the deepest point on Earth, one can only peek, and for the robotic vessels that we send into these depths, the pressure is just as unforgiving. Every seal, every connector, and every housing for a camera or a sensor must be engineered to withstand this constant, crushing embrace. This is why many of our unmanned deep-sea explorers have met their end, not through a loss of power or a communication failure, but through a sudden, catastrophic, pressure-induced implosion. In 2014, the Advanced Hybrid ROV × Nereus *, one of the few vehicles in the world capable of reaching such depths, was lost during an expedition in the Kermadec Trench at a depth of nearly 10,000 meters. The search crews found only a scattered field of small debris fragments, a somber testament to the instantaneous and total power of an implosion at such extreme pressures. When failure happens here, it happens faster than human perception, a violent and final punctuation mark at the end of a long and hopeful journey. This reality of pressure forces engineers to abandon many of the materials and designs we take for granted on the surface. Composite materials like carbon fiber, which are incredibly strong under tension and have revolutionized the aerospace industry, have proven dangerously unreliable under the immense and cyclical, compressive loads of the deep ocean. The tragic loss of the Titan submersible in 2023 at a much shallower depth was a stark and painful lesson in the unforgiving nature of these forces. In the Hadal Zone, there is no room for experimentation with unproven materials. There is only the quiet and humbling reliance on the proven strength of solid metals and the perfect geometry of the sphere. Even the systems that provide buoyancy, the very thing that allows a submersible to float, must be reimagined. Syntactic foam, the material used to provide lift for most deep-sea vehicles, is a composite of hollow glass microspheres embedded in a resin. But at the pressures of the Hadal Zone, these tiny glass bubbles begin to crush, and the foam permanently loses its buoyancy. To overcome this, our deepest diving vehicles abandon foam entirely, and instead use great arrays of larger, perfectly engineered glass or ceramic spheres, each one a small, sealed, and hollow vessel of its own, designed to withstand the crushing weight of the water and provide a reliable, incompressible lift. To descend into Challenger Deep, then, is to travel in a vessel that is less a machine and more a fortress. A small, quiet, and incredibly strong bubble of safety, designed with a profound respect for the immense and patient power of the ocean that surrounds it. Every part of its design is a silent acknowledgement of the force it is challenging, a force that will never tire, never yield, and will test every square inch of its surface for the entire duration of its long and lonely descent into the dark. To journey into Challenger Deep is to accept a profound and almost absolute silence. Not a silence of sound, for the deep ocean, as we will see, has a voice of its own, but a silence of connection. Here, 11 kilometers beneath the waves, the invisible tethers that bind our modern world, the radio waves, the GPS signals, the entire electromagnetic spectrum are completely and utterly extinguished. The very physics of water itself enforces a state of near total isolation, turning our most advanced exploration vehicles into lonely wanderers, cut off from any meaningful, real-time conversation with the surface world. Water is a remarkably effective blocker of radio waves. The same high-frequency signals that carry our television broadcasts, our Wi-Fi data, and the precise timing pings from GPS satellites can penetrate only a few centimeters into the ocean before they are absorbed and scattered into nothingness. The seamless, invisible web of information that we take for granted on land simply evaporates at the water's surface. For a submersible descending into the deep, the moment it slips beneath the waves, it is as if it has entered another dimension, a world where the familiar rules of communication no longer apply. To bridge this immense watery gap, deep-sea explorers must turn to a much older, slower, and more challenging medium: sound. Acoustic communication, sending and receiving signals in the form of sound waves that travel through the water, is the only viable method for transmitting information over long distances in the deep ocean. But sound, for all its utility, is a difficult and temperamental messenger. The first and most fundamental challenge is its speed. While radio waves travel at the speed of light, sound waves move through water at a comparative crawl, roughly 1,500 meters per second. This is fast by our everyday standards, but in the context of an 11-kilometer descent, it creates a profound and unavoidable delay. A single acoustic ping sent from a submersible on the floor of Challenger Deep to its support ship on the surface will take over 7 seconds to make the one-way journey. A simple call and response conversation, a hello sent down and a we hear you sent back, would require a wait of over 14 seconds. This is the tyranny of acoustic lag. Real-time control of a robotic vehicle becomes a practical impossibility. Imagine trying to operate a delicate robotic arm when every command you send takes 7 seconds to arrive, and the video feedback of what is happening takes another 7 seconds to return to you. By the time you see that the arm is about to close on a fragile specimen, it is already too late. This is why our most advanced unmanned deep-sea vehicles are not remotely operated in the traditional sense. They are autonomous. They must be given their instructions in advance, carrying pre-programmed mission plans that they execute on their own, in a state of almost complete communicative solitude. They are not puppets on a string, but intelligent, self-reliant explorers, making their own quiet decisions in the dark. Even the simplest of messages, a brief status update, or a burst of scientific data, becomes a Herculean task. The data rates of underwater acoustic modems are staggeringly low, reminiscent of the dial-up internet of the 1990 seconds, while our modern fiber optic cables on land can transmit trillions of bits per second. An advanced acoustic modem in the deep ocean celebrates when it can achieve a few thousand. Streaming a single, low-quality image can take several minutes. High-definition video is an impossible luxury. Communication in the deep is a language of chirps, of compressed text, and of slow, patient, and often repeated bursts of essential data. And this assumes the signal gets through at all. The ocean is not a quiet, uniform medium. It is a complex and layered environment, and its very structure seems designed to distort and obstruct the passage of sound. Layers of water with different temperatures and salinities, known as thermoclines, act like lenses, bending and refracting sound waves in unpredictable ways. A signal sent straight up from the seafloor may be curved so dramatically that it completely misses the receiver on the surface ship, creating vast shadow zones of acoustic silence. A submersible might be in a perfect, direct line of sight with its mothership, yet find itself in a pocket of complete and utter communicative darkness. The steep, canyon-like walls of the trenches themselves create another problem: multipath interference. Sound waves bounce off the underwater cliffs, creating a cacophony of echoes. The receiver on the surface ship doesn't just hear the direct signal from the submersible. It also hears dozens of delayed and distorted reflections. The original message becomes corrupted, lost in a ghost-like chorus of its own echoes. The very geography of the places we most want to explore actively works to keep us from communicating with them. In this world of profound communicative isolation, even the simple act of knowing where you are becomes a challenge. The GPS that guides our every move on the surface is useless here. Instead, deep-sea vehicles must rely on a painstaking process of acoustic navigation. Systems like ultra-short baseline, USPL, positioning, which use the surface ship as a reference, can provide an approximate location, But over a distance of 11 kilometers, and through the distorting lens of the water column, these positions can be uncertain by tens of meters. The deepest places on our planet remain, in a navigational sense, fuzzy. To find a specific hydrothermal vent or a particular geological feature a second time is an act of careful, patient, and often frustrating approximation. The consequence of all this is a fundamental and unavoidable reality of deep ocean exploration. To descend into the Hadal Zone is to willingly accept a state of profound and humbling solitude. You are, for all practical purposes, on your own, a quiet observer in a world that has cut you off from the conversation above. Every decision is deliberate, every action is planned, and every precious bit of data that is successfully sent back to the surface is a hard-won victory against the immense, quiet, and beautiful tyranny of the deep. In the collective human imagination, the journey to the bottom of the sea has always been a grand and heroic endeavor. It is a story of a few brave individuals, of pioneering vessels, and of singular, daring descents into a realm that no one has ever seen before. And in its early days, this was the truth. But the real, quiet story of why we cannot yet truly explore the ocean is less a tale of individual heroism and more a patient, sober accounting of logistics, economics, and the immense practical difficulty of turning a heroic once into a routine often. The first chapter of this human story was written on January 23rd, 1960. On that day, two men, U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh and Swiss oceanographer Jacques Piccard, sealed themselves inside the tiny steel crew sphere of a strange and massive vessel called the Bathyscaphe × Trieste *. For nearly 5 hours, they descended through the crushing, ever-darkening water column until a soft thud and a cloud of silt from the seafloor signaled their arrival. They had become the first human beings to ever witness Challenger Deep with their own eyes. They stayed for only about 20 minutes in the near-freezing darkness, observed the ghostly form of a small, flat, fish-like creature, and then began their long, slow ascent back to the world of light and air. They had proven it could be done. And then, for more than half a century, there was silence. 52 years passed before another human being returned. In March of 2012, filmmaker and explorer James Cameron made a solo descent in his own uniquely designed submersible, the Times Deep-Sea Challenger *. His journey brought back stunning high-definition images and precious scientific samples, and it once again captivated the world. But the immense gap between these two historic dives highlights the central truth of Hadal exploration. These were not the beginnings of a steady campaign, but singular, monumental efforts, the oceanic equivalent of planting a flag. The gap between Walsh and Piccard's visit and Cameron's was longer than the entire space age, more time than had passed between the Wright brothers' first flight and Neil Armstrong's first step on the moon. Only in the last few years has the story begun to shift. In 2019, the submersible Limiting Factor, part of a privately funded expedition, began a systematic and ambitious campaign to dive to the deepest points of all 5 of the world's oceans. For the first time, a certified vehicle began to visit the Hadal Zone not as a one-off stunt, but as a repeatable, almost routine, scientific operation. This vessel has now made dozens of dives into Challenger Deep, carrying a rotating cast of scientists, explorers, and specialists, turning the deepest place on Earth from a remote and singular destination into a site for sustained and methodical research. A year later, in 2020, China's Fendouge submersible also made a series of crewed dives to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, signaling that the capability to reach these depths is no longer the domain of a single pioneering nation or individual. And yet, despite this recent flurry of activity, the number of people who have ever visited Challenger Deep remains staggeringly small. As of the mid-2022, the total count is still only a few dozen individuals. The entire club of human beings who have seen our planet's deepest point with their own eyes could fit comfortably inside a single school bus. Compare that to the history of space travel, where over 600 people have officially crossed into orbit. We have built a permanent, inhabited space station circling our planet, and we are sending robotic rovers to explore the surface of other worlds, yet our own deepest ocean remains a place visited only by a tiny and exclusive handful. Why this profound discrepancy? The answer is not a lack of courage or curiosity, but a series of quiet, immense, and overlapping logistical barriers. First, the hardware is incredibly rare and expensive. A certified, reusable, full ocean depth submersible is one of the most complex and specialized pieces of machinery that humanity has ever built. The engineering required to ensure its safety is so extreme, the materials so specialized, and the testing so rigorous that only a handful have ever been successfully constructed. Building one is an endeavor that costs tens of millions of dollars and takes years of dedicated work. Second, these vehicles require an equally specialized and expensive support system. They cannot operate on their own. They need a large, technologically advanced surface ship to launch them, recover them, and communicate with them. These motherships are themselves rare vessels, equipped with heavy lift cranes, dynamic positioning systems to hold their place in the open ocean, and the workshops and technical teams needed to maintain the submersible. A single day of operating such a ship can cost tens of thousands of dollars, whether a dive is being conducted or the crew is simply waiting for a storm to pass. And the weather in the remote western Pacific, where the Mariana Trench lies, is an ever-present and unpredictable master of the schedule. This region is the heart of Typhoon Alley. A single, powerful storm can appear with little warning, forcing an expedition to suspend its operations for days or even weeks at a time, all while the immense cost of the ship, the crew, and the equipment continues to accumulate. The perfect and fleeting windows of calm weather required for a safe launch and recovery are a scarce and precious resource. And finally, there is the quiet, invisible barrier of international law and diplomacy. Challenger Deep lies within the exclusive economic zone of the Federated States of Micronesia. Any scientific expedition to this region requires official consent, a process of paperwork, diplomatic notices, and permissions that can take months to secure. This web of logistical, financial, meteorological, and bureaucratic challenges is what has kept the deepest ocean so profoundly and stubbornly out of our reach. It is a frontier that is guarded not just by pressure, but by the quiet and immense practicality of operating in the most remote and hostile environment on our planet. The immense challenge of exploring the deep ocean is not just a story of engineering or logistics. It is, at its heart, a story of finance. The old saying that a boat is a hole in the water you pour money into takes on a profound and almost astronomical new meaning when that boat is a technologically advanced research vessel and a full ocean depth submersible. The quiet, invisible current that limits our access to the huddle zone more than any other factor is the relentless and staggering flow of money required to even attempt the journey. Let us begin with the ship itself. A global-class research vessel capable of supporting deep-sea operations is one of the most expensive scientific instruments on the planet. Its daily operating rate, which includes fuel, the crew, maintenance, and insurance, is measured not in thousands, but in tens of thousands of dollars. The National Science Foundation in the United States, for example, documents daily rates of approximately $30,000 to $45,000 for its regional and ocean-class vessels. And these are the ships for standard deep-sea work. A specialized vessel with the heavy lift cranes, dynamic positioning systems, and the onboard technical infrastructure needed to support a Hadal-depth submersible commands a premium rate, often exceeding $50 per day. An expedition to Challenger Deep is not a short trip. It requires long transits across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean just to reach the remote location of the trench. These transit days, during which no science is being conducted but the ship is still moving, are billed at the full rate. A typical expedition might spend a week or more simply traveling to the dive site and another week traveling back. Already, before a single instrument has touched the water, the bill can climb into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then there is the quiet tyranny of the weather. As we have seen, the Western Pacific is a region of unpredictable storms and typhoons. An expedition might arrive on site only to be forced to wait for days or even weeks for a safe weather window to open. These standby days, where the ship and its crew are simply holding their position, waiting for the wind and waves to calm, are also typically charged at the full operating rate. A single stubborn typhoon can add another $500,000 to an expedition's budget before a single dive is made. Once a dive is underway, the costs continue to cascade. The operation of the submersible itself, with its highly trained pilots, technicians, and intricate support systems, represents an additional layer of expense. The scientific payload, the cameras, the sensors, the sampling arms, are themselves often bespoke, million-dollar instruments that have been custom-engineered to survive the immense pressures of the deep. And for every hour spent on the bottom, there are many more hours spent on the painstaking processes of pre-dive checks, launch, recovery, and post-dive maintenance. This is why, in the world of oceanography, time is quite literally money, and it flows away at a breathtaking rate. But the expenses do not even end there. There is the immense capital cost of the hardware itself. The limiting factor submersible system was publicly marketed as a $50 million package, which included not just the submersible, but its dedicated support ship and a suite of autonomous landers. The research and development that goes into designing, building, and, most importantly, certifying a vehicle for repeatable dives to 11,000 meters represents an investment of a scale that is beyond the reach of most academic or governmental research programs. The certification process alone, which involves exhaustive design reviews, materials testing, and witnessed pressure tests, adds millions to the cost and years to the development timeline. And in the high-stakes, high-pressure world of Hadal exploration, the cost of failure is absolute. The loss of an unmanned vehicle, like the Times Nereus Times in 2014, an approximately $8 million investment, was not just a financial write-off. It was a loss that set back years of planned research, as scientific teams that had booked time on the vehicle were left with no way to conduct their experiments. The loss of Japan's Times, Kaiko Times ROV in 2003, was a similar story. The failure of a single, small cable during a recovery operation led to the total loss of a vehicle that was the product of years of national investment. The ripple effects of such a loss extend far beyond the replacement cost of the hardware. This sober financial reality is the quiet, often unspoken reason why our exploration of the deepest oceans has been so slow and so sparse. A single, comprehensive, multi-week expedition to the Mariana Trench can have a final price tag measured in the millions of dollars. To sustain a campaign of such expeditions over multiple years, as was done with the Five Deeps expedition, requires a level of private funding and personal commitment that is almost unprecedented in the history of exploration. When we compare this to the economics of space travel, the paradox becomes even clearer. While a single rocket launch is immensely expensive, the technologies and infrastructures of the space industry are now well established, with multiple governmental and commercial players. This has created a more predictable and, in some cases, more accessible market. The journey to the deepest part of our own ocean remains, for now, a bespoke and almost boutique endeavor, a frontier that is guarded not just by the immense pressures of the abyss, but by the equally immense pressures of the budget. Every image we have, every sample we have collected, and every precious minute of observation from the bottom of the world has been bought at an almost unimaginable financial cost. And that, in itself, is a testament to the profound and enduring power of human curiosity. Before we can even begin to contemplate a dive, before the great research vessels leave their quiet ports, and long before the immense costs of an expedition begin to accumulate, there is another, more fundamental and beautifully quiet challenge that must be overcome. We cannot visit a place we cannot find, and for the vast majority of our planet's seafloor, we are still navigating in a state of relative blindness. The simple and startling truth is that we have better, more detailed maps of the surfaces of Mars, Venus, and the Moon than we do of the world that lies beneath our own oceans. This is the great mapping gap, and it is the first, silent barrier to all deep-sea exploration. As of today, more than 70% of the global seafloor remains unmapped to modern standards. What this means is that for the majority of our planet's surface, our maps are not the detailed high-resolution charts we have for land, but coarse, low-resolution approximations derived from satellite data. Satellites in orbit cannot see the seafloor directly. Water is opaque to the radar they use. Instead, they measure the planet's gravitational field with exquisite precision. By detecting the minute variations in gravity caused by the great, unseen topography below the immense weight of an underwater mountain or the subtle lack of mass over a deep trench, scientists can infer the general shape of the seafloor. This satellite altimetry has been a revolutionary tool. It has allowed us to sketch the broad strokes of our planet's underwater geography, revealing the great, globe-spanning mid-ocean ridges, the vast abyssal plains, and the locations of the deep ocean trenches. It is a beautiful and elegant science, but its resolution is limited. It can resolve features that are kilometers wide, but it is blind to the finer details. A great underwater volcano the size of a mountain will show up clearly, but a narrow canyon, a sheer cliff, or the small, precise slot that marks the very deepest point of Challenger Deep will be entirely invisible, lost in the fuzzy pixels of the gravity-based map. To achieve true, detailed mapping, we must use sound. Modern research vessels are equipped with multi-beam sonar systems, sophisticated acoustic instruments that send out a fan of sound beams, painting a wide swath of the seafloor with each pass. The returning echoes are then collected and processed to create a detailed, three-dimensional picture of the underwater landscape, with a resolution that can be as fine as a few meters. This is the gold standard of seafloor mapping, the only method that can truly reveal the intricate texture of the deep, but the process is incredibly slow and painstaking. A single ship, traveling at a steady pace, can map only a tiny fraction of the ocean at a time. To map the entire global seafloor this way would be a monumental undertaking, an endeavor that would require hundreds of ship years and a global, coordinated effort on a scale that has not yet been achieved. This is why, for now, our high-resolution maps of the ocean floor exist only as a patchwork, a collection of well-mapped corridors and coastal regions separated by vast and largely uncharted territories. This mapping gap has profound and practical consequences for our journey to Challenger Deep. The Mariana Trench may be known, but its detailed, fine-scale topography is still a place of discovery. Before an expensive submersible is ever put in the water, its support ship must spend days or even weeks meticulously remapping the target area with its own multi-beam sonar. The existing maps are simply not good enough to ensure a safe and precise dive. The first phase of any Hadal expedition is always a slow, patient, and methodical act of cartography. The ship steams back and forth in a tight, lawnmower-like pattern, its sonar beams painting a new, more detailed picture of the trench floor, revealing the slopes, the sills, and the small, subtle depressions that might hold the true, local depth minimum. The very physics of sound at 11 kilometers depth, as we have seen, conspires to make even this process a challenge. The low-frequency sonar beams required to penetrate such a great depth have a large footprint, meaning a single acoustic ping can illuminate an area on the seafloor the size of a football field. Small but significant features can be lost between the pings or averaged out within the broad beam. The steep, V-shaped walls of the trench also create their own problems, casting acoustic shadows areas that the sound beams simply cannot reach and creating confusing echoes that can corrupt the data. Even after all this careful, on-site mapping, a degree of uncertainty remains. The final dive target for a submersible is chosen based on the best available data, but it is still a target in a world that is only partially known. The deepest places on our planet are so remote and so difficult to chart that every expedition must begin with the humble act of rediscovering its own destination. This is the quiet and profound irony of our modern age of exploration. We have rovers driving on another planet, guided by maps with a resolution of just a few meters. But when we journey to the bottom of our own world, our first task is to simply and patiently ask, where exactly are we going? Having descended through the layers of the ocean, acknowledged the immense practical challenges of pressure and communication, and mapped our small, uncertain corner of the abyss, let us now imagine we have finally arrived. Our small submersible rests gently on the fine, silty floor of Challenger Deep, nearly 11 kilometers beneath the waves. Outside our tiny viewport, the world is one of absolute and eternal darkness. The only light here is the faint, sterile glow of our own vehicle's lamps, a small and lonely island of illumination in a kingdom of profound and unending night. It is in this silent, pressurized world that we can begin to observe the final and most beautiful mystery of the deep, life. The question of what could possibly survive in such a place has haunted the human imagination for centuries. It is an environment of extremes that seems actively hostile to life as we know it. The pressure is crushing. The temperature hovers just a degree or two above freezing. There is no sunlight, and therefore no photosynthesis, the process that fuels almost all life on Earth's surface. And food, in this deep and lonely place, is incredibly scarce, limited to the gentle, slow-motion snow of organic matter that drifts down from the sunlit world miles above. And yet, life is here. It is a quiet life, a slow life, a life that has adapted to these extreme conditions with a beautiful and ingenious resilience. The creatures of the Hadal Zone are not the sea monsters of myth, great krakens or leviathans. They are, for the most part, small, delicate, and often ghostly in their appearance. One of the most dominant and successful groups of animals in these deep trenches are the amphipods. These are small, shrimp-like crustaceans, scavengers that thrive on the sparse bounty of the deep. In Challenger Deep, giant amphipods, some growing to the size of a human hand, have been observed. Their pale, almost translucent bodies, a common sight in the baited traps and cameras sent to the bottom. They are the quiet and patient janitors of the abyss, congregating with a surprising swiftness on any food that falls into their realm. But perhaps the most astonishing discovery has been that of the Hadal snailfish. In recent years, researchers have filmed and even captured these ghostly, gelatinous fish at depths previously thought to be impossible for any vertebrate to survive. A new record was set in 2023, when a species of Times pseudoleparus Times snailfish was filmed at an incredible depth of 8,336 meters in the Izu Ogasawara Trench. These are the deepest living fish ever found, and they represent a marvel of biochemical engineering. To survive the immense pressure, they have abandoned many of the features we associate with fish. They have no scales. Their skeletons are soft and cartilaginous, not hard and bony. Their bodies are gelatinous, their tissues almost transparent, a form that seems to yield to the pressure rather than fight against it. But their true secret lies within their cells. To prevent their proteins from being crushed and destabilized by the immense pressure, these fish pack their tissues with a special molecule called trimethylamine N-oxide, or TMAO. This small organic molecule acts as a piezolyte, a pressure protectant, surrounding their proteins and holding them in their correct, functional shape. There is a serene and beautiful elegance to this solution. These fish do not survive through brute strength or impenetrable armor, but through a subtle and quiet adjustment of their own internal chemistry. However, there is a limit. The mathematics of cellular biology predict that there is a maximum possible concentration of TMAO that can be held within a cell. Beyond that point, the cell's own internal fluid would become so dense that water balance would fail catastrophically. This creates a hard, physiological boundary for vertebrate life, a line in the deep that no fish, no matter how well adapted, can cross. And that predicted limit is around 8,200 to 8,400 meters. The deepest fish we have ever found are living right at the very edge of the possible, a quiet and profound testament to life's incredible and yet ultimately finite capacity for adaptation. Beyond the vertebrates, the deepest life belongs to the smallest and most ancient of all creatures, microbes. The fine, cold mud of the trench floor is not sterile. It is teeming with an immense and diverse community of bacteria and other single-celled organisms. These microbes are the true masters of this realm. Many are piezophiles, or pressure lovers, organisms that are not just tolerant of extreme pressure, but are in fact dependent on it. They cannot function, or in some cases even survive, at the gentle atmospheric pressures of our surface world. These microbes are the base of the Hudal food web. They do not feed on sunlight, but on chemistry. They process the organic matter that drifts down from above, and they engage in chemosynthesis, deriving energy from the chemical reactions between the minerals in the sediment and the water itself. The very ground in this deep, dark place is alive, a slow-breathing, metabolic engine that quietly supports the entire ecosystem. And yet, even in this most remote and seemingly pristine wilderness on our planet, we find the sad and quiet echoes of our own surface world. Studies of the creatures in the Mariana Trench have revealed a startling and sobering truth. The small amphipods scavenging on the seafloor have been found to have microplastics and synthetic fibers in their guts. Persistent organic pollutants, industrial chemicals that have been carried into the ocean from our factories and cities, have accumulated in their tissues to levels that are sometimes higher than in animals from heavily polluted coastal waters. The trenches, with their deep, funnel-like geography, act as terminal sinks, not just for organic matter, but for our own persistent waste. The quietest, most isolated place on Earth is not silent after all. It carries the faint and toxic whisper of our own civilization. To observe life at the bottom of the world is one thing. To understand it is another, far more delicate and challenging task. Our journey into the Hadal Zone is not just a descent into a world of immense pressure and darkness. It is a journey into a realm where the very act of observation can alter and sometimes destroy the very thing we wish to study. The biological secrets of Challenger Deep are guarded not just by its depth, but by a beautiful and frustrating set of practical problems that make every sample, every image, and every piece of data a rare and precious victory. The first great challenge is simply one of encounter. The Hadal Zone is vast in its depth, but small in its area, and the life within it is often sparse and patchily distributed. A human-occupied submersible, or a remotely operated vehicle, may spend hours traversing the seafloor and see very little. Then, by sheer chance, its lights might fall upon a small cluster of creatures gathered around a rare food fall, the carcass of a fish or a whale that has sunk from the world above. These ephemeral oases of abundance are the hotspots of Hadal life, but they are incredibly difficult to find. Baited landers, equipped with cameras and traps, are our best tool for attracting the mobile scavengers of the deep, like the great amphipods. But this method gives us a biased view. We see only those creatures that are bold enough and hungry enough to approach a strange, new object that smells of a meal. The quieter, more sedentary life remains hidden from us. But the greatest and most profound challenge comes not from finding life, but from bringing it home. The creatures of the Hadal zone are masters of surviving pressure. Their very bodies, their cells, their proteins are all exquisitely adapted to the crushing weight of 1,100 atmospheres. When we try to bring them up to our world, to the gentle 1 atmosphere pressure of the surface, we are, in effect, pulling them into an environment that is as alien and hostile to them as the vacuum of space is to us. The journey to the surface is an explosive and often lethal decompression. For a fish like the Hadal snailfish, the change is catastrophic. The gases dissolved in its tissues at high pressure can expand rapidly, a condition similar to the bends in human divers, but on a scale that is instantly fatal. Its delicate, gelatinous body, which is perfectly adapted to being supported by the dense, high-pressure water around it, can lose its structure and become damaged. Even for the invertebrates, the journey is perilous, and for the microbes, the very engines of the Hadal ecosystem, decompression can be just as devastating. Their cell membranes, which are fluid and functional at high pressure, can become rigid and fail at low pressure. Their pressure-sensitive enzymes, the molecular machines that drive their metabolism, can unravel and stop working. A microbe that is a thriving piezophile at the bottom of the trench can become a dead and useless collection of molecules by the time it reaches the laboratory on the ship's deck. To overcome this, oceanographers have developed some of the most sophisticated and gentle tools in all of science. Isobaric, or pressure-retaining, samplers. These are marvels of engineering, small, immensely strong chambers that can capture an animal or a sample of water and sediment at the seafloor and maintain it at its native, crushing pressure all the way back to the surface. Inside these small, mobile aquariums, a creature from the abyss can be brought into our world without ever experiencing the trauma of decompression. But these devices are incredibly complex, heavy, expensive, and rare. They are the delicate beating heart of Hadal biology, but their use is a painstaking and often fussy process. A single nicked O-ring, a tiny valve failure under 16,000 pounds per square inch of pressure, can mean the loss of a sample that an entire expedition was planned around. And even when a sample is brought back successfully, the challenges continue. We know that trenches are dynamic, geologically active places, and their chemistry is in constant flux. A single sample of water or mud is just a snapshot, a single frame from a very long and complex film. We do not yet know how these deep ecosystems respond to the great, episodic events that define their world: the underwater earthquakes, the sudden avalanches of sediment, the rare but massive food falls. Our presence in the Hadal zone is too brief, too fleeting. We are like tourists, making a brief, daytime visit to a city that truly comes alive only at night, during festivals we never get to see. To truly understand this world, we need a permanent presence. We need long-term, autonomous observatories that can sit quietly on the seafloor for months or even years at a time, their sensors patiently watching, listening, and measuring the slow, deep rhythms of this hidden world. Such observatories are the great dream of Hadal science, but they remain, for now, at the very edge of our technological capabilities. The power, the data storage, and the sheer, long-term reliability required to operate for years in such a hostile environment are immense challenges, and so, for now, our knowledge of life in the deepest ocean remains a beautiful but fragmented mosaic, a collection of stunning but disconnected snapshots. We have a few precious specimens kept alive in high-pressure labs, a handful of beautiful, haunting videos, and a growing catalog of species identified from their DNA. But we do not yet have the full story. The very act of observing this world, of trying to bridge the immense gap of pressure and time that separates it from our own, is one of the quietest, most difficult, and most profound challenges in all of science. The story of the deep ocean is not only a narrative of strange creatures and crushing pressures, it is also a story written in silence and sound. As our submersible rests on the floor of Challenger Deep, the darkness is absolute, but the silence is not. This place, which we might imagine to be the most tranquil and isolated spot on Earth, is in fact a crossroads of acoustic information, a quiet listening post that hears the faint and distant heartbeat of the entire planet. To be here is to be immersed in a soundscape of almost mythic proportions. In 2015, in a remarkable feat of ocean engineering, a team of scientists successfully deployed a hydrophone, a specialized underwater microphone encased in a titanium pressure sphere, and lowered it to the very bottom of the Mariana Trench. For 23 days, this small and resilient ear sat on the seafloor, continuously recording the ambient sounds of the abyss. The scientists expected to find a realm of profound and almost perfect quiet, a place shielded by 11 kilometers of water from the noisy clamor of the surface world. What they found was exactly the opposite. The deepest place on Earth is surprisingly, beautifully, and constantly noisy. The most dominant voice in this deep-sea symphony is that of the Earth itself. The Mariana Trench is a geologically active place, a wound in the planet's crust where the Pacific Plate is slowly being forced beneath the Philippine Plate. This constant grinding motion generates a continuous stream of seismic activity. The recordings from Challenger Deep are filled with the low, resonant rumble of distant and nearby earthquakes. The solid rock of the seafloor acts as an incredibly efficient conductor of sound, carrying the tremors from tectonic adjustments thousands of kilometers away, directly to the hydrophone. The deepest point in the ocean is not a place of stillness, but a place that is in a constant, humming conversation with the planet's own restless, fiery heart. But it is not just the voice of the Earth that penetrates this deep. The recordings also captured another, even more astonishing sound: the faint and mournful songs of whales, the distinct, low-frequency calls of baleen whales, like fin whales and possibly even blue whales, were clearly audible, their long, sweeping notes traveling across entire ocean basins to reach this most remote of listening posts. These sounds do not travel straight down through the water. They are guided by a remarkable natural phenomenon known as the SOFA channel, or deep sound channel. This is a horizontal layer in the ocean, typically at a depth of around 1,000 meters, where the temperature and pressure conditions are just right to trap sound waves and allow them to travel for thousands of kilometers with very little loss of energy. The songs of whales, generated in this channel, can propagate across an entire ocean, and from that channel, a faint echo of their acoustic energy filters down, down, down into the abyss. To hear a whale singing from the bottom of the world is a beautiful and haunting reminder of how interconnected the ocean is, a single, acoustic space where the gentle calls of its largest inhabitants can be heard, even in its deepest and most silent-seeming chambers. And sadly, another voice is present in this deep soundscape, the voice of humanity. The hydrophone also picked up the clear and unmistakable sound of a ship's propeller passing on the surface, 11 kilometers above. The low-frequency hum of commercial shipping, the great, slow-moving engines that power our global economy, now forms a constant, anthropogenic background noise in every ocean on Earth. Not even the deepest, most remote point on our planet is free from the sound of our own activity. This discovery was a sober and humbling revelation, a piece of acoustic evidence that our footprint on this planet is even larger and more pervasive than we had ever imagined. The silence of the deep, it seems, is a silence that no longer truly exists. Even the weather, a phenomenon of the air, leaves its acoustic signature on the seafloor. During the deployment of the hydrophone, a Category 4 typhoon passed overhead, its immense and powerful energy, whipping the ocean's surface into a fury, was clearly recorded in the deep. The crashing of waves and the immense turbulence at the surface generate powerful, low-frequency pressure waves that can travel through the entire water column, a constant, roaring background noise that rises and falls with the violence of the storm far above. The deepest part of the ocean feels the weather not as wind or rain, but as a deep and resonant sound, a slow-motion roar that fills the abyss for days on end. To listen to these recordings is to experience the deepest ocean not as an isolated void, but as an incredibly sensitive and integrated part of the entire planetary system. It is a place that hears the tectonic breathing of the earth, the long-distance conversations of its greatest creatures, the persistent hum of human industry, and the raging of its own distant storms. The paradox is beautiful and profound. This is a place so difficult to communicate times with asterisk, yet it is a place that hears times everything asterisk. This acoustic environment presents another subtle but significant challenge to our exploration. Any sensitive instrument, any robotic vehicle trying to listen for the faint chemical signals of a hydrothermal vent or the subtle clicks of a deep-sea creature must do so against this constant and surprisingly loud background noise. To explore the deep is not just a challenge of pressure, but one of signal to noise, a quiet and patient art of learning to distinguish the faint, local whispers from the great, oceanic roar. Our journey to the deepest part of the ocean reveals a frontier that is guarded not by a single, formidable wall, but by a series of overlapping and beautifully complex challenges. We have felt the immense and patient force of pressure. We have acknowledged the profound and humbling silence of communication, and we have recognized the sheer, practical difficulties of logistics, finance, and the great, unmapped wilderness of the seafloor. But beneath all these external barriers lies another, more intimate, and perhaps more profound reason why we cannot yet truly explore the ocean. The story is simply too big, and our time there is too short. The ecosystems of the deep, and particularly of the Hadal trenches, operate on a rhythm that is fundamentally different from our own. It is a world of incredible slowness, punctuated by rare and unpredictable moments of dramatic change. Life here does not follow the frantic, sun-driven cycles of the surface world. There are no days and no nights. There are no seasons of summer and winter. There is only a slow, steady, and near-freezing dark, a perpetual stillness where time itself seems to move with a different and more geological cadence. The creatures that live here are masters of this slowness. Their metabolisms are incredibly low, their movements deliberate, and their lives unfold over immense spans of time. Our visits to this realm are, by contrast, fleeting and ephemeral. A crude submersible might spend a precious handful of hours on the bottom. An autonomous lander might sit patiently for a day, a week, or, if we are very lucky, a few months. But even these longer deployments are but a brief and single snapshot in the life of an ecosystem that measures its own history in centuries and millennia. We are tourists in a land where the locals are ancient and unhurried, and we almost never stay long enough to understand the true patterns of their world. The most important events in the Hadal ecosystem are often the ones we are least likely to witness. The trenches are ecosystems of boom and bust, long periods of near starvation, punctuated by the rare and unpredictable arrival of a massive foodfall. When a large whale dies in the open ocean, its colossal carcass can sink for days, eventually coming to rest on the abyssal or even the Hadal floor. This sudden, immense delivery of organic matter, the equivalent of thousands of years of marine snow, triggers a flurry of activity. Great swarms of scavengers, from the ghostly snailfish to the giant amphipods, will descend upon the carcass, beginning a long and complex process of succession. First, the mobile scavengers strip the soft tissues. Then, a host of smaller, enrichment opportunist worms and crustaceans colonize the bones. And finally, over decades, specialized chemosynthetic bacteria will break down the remaining lipids in the bones, creating a small, self-sustaining ecosystem that can persist for up to a century. These whale falls are the great foundational events of the deep, the moments that create hotspots of biodiversity and sustain life for generations. And yet, the chances of one of our submersibles happening upon one during its brief visit are infinitesimally small. We know they happen, but we have almost never seen one in the Hadal Zone. We are always arriving just before the great festival begins, or long after the feast is over. Similarly, the geological life of a trench is a story of long, quiet stillness, interrupted by sudden and transformative violence. As we have seen, the great earthquakes that rock these subduction zones can trigger massive underwater landslides that instantly reshape the seafloor, burying entire ecosystems under meters of sediment. The 2011 Tohoku earthquake, for example, flushed over 1 trillion grams of fresh organic carbon into the Japan Trench in a single event, a catastrophic delivery that would have completely rewired the local food web for years to come. Our scientific instruments can record the tremor, and we can map the aftermath, but to truly understand how the deep-sea ecosystem responds, how it recovers, and how it is shaped by these periodic resets, we would need to be there, watching, for decades or even centuries. This mismatch of timescales is perhaps the most humbling and beautiful challenge of all. It is not a problem that can be solved by stronger titanium or more powerful batteries. It is a fundamental difference in rhythm between our own brief, hurried lives and the slow, patient, and enduring life of the deep ocean. To truly explore this world would require not a single expedition, but a permanent presence. It would require a network of long-term, autonomous seafloor observatories, robotic scientists that could sit quietly in the dark for decades, their sensors patiently monitoring the subtle changes in chemistry, in biology, and in the geology of the trench floor. They would be our quiet, sleepless observers, our ambassadors to a world whose rhythms are too slow for us to perceive directly. Such observatories are the great and beautiful dream of deep-sea science, but they remain at the very edge of our technological horizon, a dream that is as vast and as challenging as the ocean itself. And so, for now, we must be content with the fragments we can gather. Each short dive, each precious sample, each brief video clip is another piece in a vast and incomplete puzzle. We must learn to read the story of the deep, not as a continuous narrative, but from these scattered pages, using our science and our imagination to fill in the immense, quiet gaps in between. Our inability to truly explore the ocean, in the end, is not a failure of our technology, but a quiet and profound lesson in humility. It teaches us that some of the greatest stories in the universe are the ones that unfold too slowly for us to ever see them in their entirety. And our role may not be to watch the whole film, but to simply and gratefully collect a few beautiful, breathtaking, and perfectly preserved frames. Our journey has taken us into a world of profound physical and logistical challenges, a realm guarded by pressure, darkness, and immense distance. But the quiet story of why we cannot truly explore the ocean has another, equally beautiful and often overlooked chapter. The very nature of the deep-sea environment, in all its pristine and ancient stillness, is also a place of profound fragility. Our presence here, no matter how brief or careful, is an intrusion, and our growing ability to reach these depths brings with it a quiet and solemn responsibility to become not just explorers, but guardians. For millennia, the Hadal Zone existed in a state of almost perfect isolation. It was a world untouched, a laboratory of evolution that had been running its slow and patient experiments in the dark for hundreds of millions of years, entirely free from the influence of the sunlit world above. But in the last century, and particularly in the last few decades, that ancient isolation has been broken. We have arrived, and we have not come empty-handed. The sad and quiet truth is that our human footprint has reached the deepest places on Earth long before our full understanding ever has. The most visible sign of our presence is, tragically, our waste. The small, pale amphipods that thrive in the crushing pressure of the Mariana Trench, creatures that have never seen the sun, have been found with microplastics in their guts. Synthetic fibers from our clothing, fragments of our packaging, the microscopic detritus of our industrial world have made the long, 7-mile journey from our shores and ships, have sunk through the entire water column, and are now being incorporated into the food web at the very bottom of the world. The trenches, with their deep, funnel-like shape, act as natural sinks, collecting not just the gentle rain of marine snow, but also the persistent and indigestible confetti of our modern lives. It is a sobering and deeply poignant discovery. We have polluted a wilderness we have not even yet begun to map. But the contamination is not just physical, it is chemical. Persistent organic pollutants, industrial chemicals, like PCBs and flame retardants that are incredibly resistant to breaking down, have also been found in the tissues of hadal creatures, often at concentrations even higher than those found in animals from heavily polluted coastal waters. These chemicals travel through the atmosphere and the ocean, and they biomagnify, becoming more concentrated as they move up the food chain. The creatures of the deep, scavenging on the organic matter that sinks from above, are unknowingly consuming the concentrated chemical legacy of the surface world. Even heavy metals like mercury, released from the burning of coal and other industrial processes, have found their way into these deep and seemingly pristine ecosystems. The deepest place on our planet is no longer a perfect, untouched baseline. It is already a quiet archive of the Anthropocene, the age of humans. Our very act of exploration, for all its good intentions, is also an act of disturbance. The bright lights of our submersibles are a sudden and alien sun in a world that has only ever known darkness. We do not yet know the long-term effects of this light on the delicate, light-sensitive eyes of deep-sea creatures. The hum of our vehicle's thrusters introduces a new and foreign sound into an acoustic environment that has, for eons, been shaped only by the rumble of the earth and the distant songs of whales. Even the simple act of taking a sample, of removing a rock or a creature from this ancient and slow-moving ecosystem, is an act of significant and perhaps irreversible change. This is the great and quiet dilemma of modern exploration. To understand this world, we must visit it, but to visit it is to change it. This is why modern deep-sea science is governed by a profound and growing sense of conservation and care. Expeditions are planned with a meticulous focus on minimizing impact. Samples are taken with a respect for their rarity and the potential for contamination, both of the environment by our vehicles and of our samples by the surface world, is a constant and primary concern. There is also the quiet and looming threat of future exploitation. The deep seafloor, and particularly the hydrothermal vents that are often found in these tectonically active zones, are rich in valuable minerals, copper, gold, zinc, and rare earth elements. As the resources on land become scarcer, there is growing commercial interest in the possibility of deep-sea mining. The prospect of large-scale industrial activity in these most fragile and least understood ecosystems on our planet is a source of profound concern for the scientific community. To begin mining a world we do not yet understand would be an act of irreversible folly, a destruction of a priceless natural library before we have even learned to read its most ancient books. And so, our inability to truly explore the ocean is not just a function of our technological limits. It is also a function of our own growing wisdom. It is a quiet recognition that with great power comes great responsibility. The very same technologies that are allowing us to finally pierce the veil of the deep are also revealing to us just how unique, how fragile, and how deserving of our protection these environments truly are. Perhaps the greatest exploration that lies ahead is not a physical one, but an ethical one. It is the long and quiet journey of learning how to be a species that can observe without destroying, that can learn without exploiting, and that can touch a new and pristine world with the gentle and respectful hand of a guardian, rather than the grasping hand of a conqueror. The deepest ocean challenges not only our engineering, but our character, and in its silent, profound, and beautiful fragility, it offers us a final and most important lesson, that the greatest measure of our own advancement is not in how far we can go, but in the care and the wisdom we show when we finally get there. Our journey has taken us deep into a world of physical barriers and silent biological wonders. But to fully understand why the deep ocean remains a realm of mystery, we must now ascend from the quiet, crushing dark of the Hadal Zone and turn our gaze to the restless and ever-changing world of the surface. For the great story of deep-sea exploration is not only a story of what happens at the bottom. It is a story that is profoundly and inescapably governed by what happens at the top. The greatest and most unpredictable gatekeeper of the abyss is the ocean's own face, the waves, the wind, and the weather. An expedition to Challenger Deep is a logistical ballet of immense complexity, and the final, crucial act of this ballet is the launch and recovery of the submersible. This is the moment when the precious, multi-million-dollar vehicle is lifted from the deck of its support ship and gently placed into the water, and the even more delicate moment when it is brought back on board. It is in these few, fleeting hours, at the boundary between air and water, that an entire multi-week expedition is at its most vulnerable. And the success of this moment is entirely at the mercy of the sea. The support ships that carry these vehicles are great, stable platforms, but they are not immune to the ocean's motion. Even on a seemingly calm day, the gentle rise and fall of the ocean's swell can create a powerful and dangerous dynamic. A 10-ton submersible, swinging from the end of a crane cable, becomes a massive pendulum. A single, ill-timed wave can send it crashing against the side of the ship, causing catastrophic damage. The window for a safe launch or recovery is incredibly narrow, often requiring sea states with wave heights of no more than a meter or two. In the remote western Pacific, where the Mariana Trench lies, such calm conditions are a rare and precious gift. This is a region of the world's oceans, known for its dynamic and often violent weather. It is the heart of Typhoon Alley, and even outside of the main typhoon season, the sea is rarely still. An expedition can spend days or even weeks on site, waiting in a state of patient, expensive frustration for a single, brief period of calm that is long enough to safely conduct a dive. There is a quiet and beautiful poetry to this predicament. We can build a machine capable of surviving the most extreme and crushing pressures on the planet, a fortress of titanium and engineering genius. But that same fortress can be defeated by a simple 2-meter wave. It is a profound and humbling reminder of where the true power of the ocean lies, not just in its immense static weight, but in its constant, restless, and unpredictable motion. The process of a launch itself is a marvel of skill and coordination. The ship's crew, the submersible pilots, and a team of support divers must work in perfect synchrony. The ship's dynamic positioning system, a network of powerful thrusters controlled by a computer, will hold the vessel in a precise location against the push of wind and current. The crane operator must lift the submersible with an almost impossibly gentle touch, timing its entry into the water to coincide with the trough of a wave. And in the water, a team of swimmers must quickly detach the lift lines, perform final checks, and give the all-clear for the submersible to begin its long, lonely descent. The entire operation is a high-stakes, real-world dance between human skill and the raw, untamable power of the sea. The recovery is even more fraught with peril. After a submersible has spent 12 or more hours in the deep, its power reserves are low, and its crew is tired. It surfaces as a small and vulnerable object in a vast and often choppy sea. The support ship must locate it, often first by its radio beacon, and then maneuver its great hull alongside the tiny vehicle without a collision. The swimmers must re-enter the water, often in the fading light of dusk or the darkness of night, to attach the heavy lift lines. And once again, the crane operator must time the lift with the motion of the waves, plucking the submersible from the ocean's grasp in a single, fluid, and perfectly executed motion. A single mistake, a single moment of miscommunication can have disastrous consequences. It was during just such a recovery operation, in the midst of a developing typhoon, that the Japanese ROV Times Kaiko Times was tragically lost in 2003. This ever-present challenge of the sea surface is what truly dictates the rhythm of deep-sea exploration. The missions are planned not around the desires of the scientists, but around the predictions of the weather forecast. And even the best forecasts are only an educated guess. A mission plan is not a rigid schedule, but a fluid and constantly adapting response to the mood of the ocean. Dives are postponed, shortened, or canceled entirely, based on a subtle shift in the wind or a distant, approaching swell. The ocean, in the end, always has the final say. This beautiful and frustrating reality shapes the very nature of the science we can conduct. We cannot simply choose to study the deep sea during a particular storm to see its effects, or to make a dive on a specific, predetermined day. We must go when the ocean allows us, and we must be content with the precious, fleeting moments of calm that it grants us. This is why our knowledge of the deep ocean is so episodic, so tied to these small and opportunistic windows of access. We are not the masters of this realm. We are humble visitors, invited in only when the great, restless gatekeeper of the surface is in a quiet and gentle mood. Our journey to the bottom of the world has been one of descending through layers, both physical and conceptual. We have passed from the sunlit surface to the twilight zone, and finally into the absolute, crushing darkness of the Hadal realm. We have confronted the immense forces of pressure, the profound silence of communication, and the humbling logistics of weather and finance. And yet, there is one final, quiet layer to this story, a beautiful and often unseen dimension that underpins all our exploration, the layer of human perception and the way the deep ocean has flowed not just through our science, but through our myths, our stories, and our collective imagination. For as long as human beings have lived by the shore and sailed upon the waves, the deep ocean has been a place of profound and beautiful mystery. It was the great other world, a realm that existed alongside our own but was governed by different rules, a place that held both unimaginable treasures and unknowable terrors. Before we had sonar and submersibles, our only way to explore this world was through the power of our imagination. And so, we filled it with monsters and with gods. In the ancient world, every culture that lived by the sea had its stories of the deep. The Greeks told of Poseidon, the great and moody god of the sea who could stir the waves into a fury or calm them with a gesture. They imagined the abyss as a part of the underworld, a dark and watery antechamber to the realm of Hades. In Norse mythology, the world was encircled by the immense coils of Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, a creature so vast that it could bite its own tail. To sailors, the creaking of their wooden ships in a heavy swell, or the glimpse of a whale's fluke in the distant mist, could be interpreted as the stirring of this great, slumbering beast. These were not just stories for entertainment. They were humanity's first attempts to map the unknown, to give a name and a face to a realm that was powerful, unpredictable, and profoundly beyond our control. The sea monsters of old, the krakens, the leviathans, the sea serpents, were the physical embodiment of our own deep-seated fear and respect for the ocean's power. They were the stories we told ourselves about the darkness that lay just beyond the reach of our nets and our understanding. As the age of exploration dawned and sailors began to venture farther across the globe, these stories traveled with them. The deep ocean remained a place of wonder and peril. The vast, empty expanses of the open ocean, far from any shore, were a source of deep psychological dread. To be in a small, wooden ship, surrounded by a seemingly infinite and bottomless sea, was to feel profoundly and terrifyingly small. The sailors filled this emptiness with their own tales of phantom ships, of mermaids, and of great, ship-swallowing whirlpools. These were the myths that helped to populate the blank spaces on the map, turning an indifferent ocean into a place of character and personality. And yet, even in these old stories, there was a glimmer of scientific truth. The tales of giant squid, long dismissed as sailors' yarns, were confirmed in the 19th century with the discovery of the first physical specimens. The great kraken of legend was real. It was Time's Architeuthis asterisk, the giant squid, a true leviathan of the deep, a creature that had been silently living in the ocean's midnight zone all along, its existence a secret kept by the immense pressures of its home. This slow transformation, from myth to science, is one of the most beautiful parts of the ocean's story. With the voyage of the HMS Challenger and the birth of modern oceanography, the deep sea began to be explored not just with stories, but with sounding lines, with dredges, and with thermometers. And with every new sample pulled from the abyss, a new and even more wondrous story began to emerge. The real creatures of the deep, the ghostly anglerfish, with its own bioluminescent lure, the ethereal vampire squid, the delicate and otherworldly jellyfish proved to be even stranger and more beautiful than the monsters of legend. The reality was more imaginative than the myth. This journey from myth to science continues today. The deep ocean is one of the last frontiers where a single discovery, a single image from an ROV, can completely reshape our understanding of what is possible. It is a place where new species are still discovered with a regularity that is unheard of on land, a place where we are still, in many ways, just beginning to write the first chapter of its true story. There is a profound and beautiful humility in this. It reminds us that for all our knowledge, the world is still full of mystery. To study the deep ocean is to be in a constant state of wonder, to be always prepared for the unexpected, and it connects us to that most ancient and human of impulses, the desire to know what lies beyond the edge of the map. The myths of our ancestors and the scientific papers of our modern oceanographers are, in this sense, part of the same long and quiet journey. They are both attempts to shine a light, however faint, into the great and beautiful darkness that lies at the bottom of our own world. Our voyage into the deep, like all journeys into the unknown, ultimately becomes a mirror as we strain to pierce the crushing darkness of the abyss, to understand its strange inhabitants and its silent alien physics. We are also, in a quiet and profound way, learning to see ourselves. The challenges of exploring the Hadal Zone are not just external obstacles of pressure and distance. They are a reflection of our own human limitations, our technological adolescence, and the immense, beautiful gap between our ambition and our capability. The story of why we cannot yet truly explore the ocean is, in the end, a story about us. Consider our tools. We have built vessels of incredible strength and sophistication, small bubbles of life support that can carry us to the bottom of the world. We have sent out robotic emissaries, our autonomous eyes and hands, to map and sample this hidden realm. These are marvels of human ingenuity, testaments to our persistent and unyielding curiosity. And yet, when set against the sheer, patient, and immense power of the deep ocean, they are revealed for what they are: fragile, tentative, and profoundly limited. Our inability to communicate in real time across the 11-kilometer water column is not a failure of engineering. It is a fundamental lesson in the laws of physics. It is the universe gently reminding us that not all distances can be bridged by our desire for instant connection. The profound silence that envelops a deep-sea vehicle is a quiet and humbling teacher. It forces us to plan, to be patient, and to trust in the autonomy of the machines we have created. It teaches us a different kind of conversation with the unknown, one that is not of question and immediate answer, but of sending out our curiosity and then waiting with a long and quiet faith for a reply. The financial and logistical hurdles we have explored are also a mirror. They reflect the priorities and the values of our civilization. We have, as a species, found the will and the resources to build global economies, to wage colossal wars, and to reach for the surface of other worlds. Yet, the sustained and systematic exploration of the largest and most foundational ecosystem on our own planet has, until very recently, remained a niche and underfunded pursuit. The scarcity of hadal depth submersibles and the vast, unmapped expanses of our own seafloor are a quiet testament to a collective blind spot, a strange and historic turning of our gaze outward to the stars, while the world of wonders at our own feet remained largely ignored. This is not a story of blame, but of perspective. For most of our history, the deep ocean was simply too far, too difficult, too utterly alien to be a part of our conscious world. It was a realm of myth and imagination precisely because it was beyond the reach of our physical experience. Only now, in this brief and recent moment of our technological coming of age, have we finally developed the tools to begin to pull back the curtain. And in doing so, we are forced to confront the humbling truth of how little we truly know about our own home. The traces of our own presence in the deepest trenches, the microplastics in the guts of amphipods, the pollutants in their tissues, are the most poignant and solemn reflection of all. They are the unintended and sorrowful signature of our own global success. They are a mirror, showing us that our reach has far exceeded our wisdom. We have developed the power to affect every corner of the planet, from the highest layers of the atmosphere to the deepest slot in the ocean floor, but we have not yet developed the collective discipline to manage that power with care and foresight. To find our own refuse in the most remote and pristine wilderness on Earth is a moment of profound and quiet reckoning. It is the ocean, gently but firmly holding up a mirror and asking us to look at what we have become. It is a call not just to exploration, but to stewardship. And yet, in this mirror, there is also a reflection of our greatest and most beautiful qualities. Our relentless curiosity, the quiet, persistent drive to know what lies over the next hill or beyond the next wave. Our ingenuity, the beautiful and creative spark that allows us to build machines that can think for themselves in the dark and withstand the weight of a world. And our capacity for awe, that uniquely human ability to be moved, to be humbled, and to be profoundly changed by the sheer, majestic beauty of a world we did not create, but are privileged to observe. To accept that we cannot yet truly explore the ocean is not an admission of failure. It is an act of quiet and beautiful humility. It is the wisdom of recognizing the scale of the task, the depth of the mystery, and the importance of proceeding with patience and with care. The ocean, in its immense and silent majesty, does not demand that we conquer it. It invites us, instead, to simply observe it, to listen to its ancient rhythms, and to learn from its quiet, profound, and often humbling lessons. The true journey into the deep is, in the end, a journey into a deeper understanding of ourselves. Our journey has revealed a frontier guarded by immense and varied challenges. We have felt the weight of pressure, the silence of lost communication, and the humbling patience of geological time. Yet, as our technology slowly and steadily advances, the doors to this hidden kingdom are beginning to open, however slightly. The future of deep ocean exploration is a story of quiet innovation, of new and ingenious ways to listen, to see, and to endure in this most extreme of all environments. It is a future that promises not a sudden and dramatic conquest of the abyss, but a slow and beautiful dawn of new understanding. The first glimmers of this new dawn are coming in the form of smarter, more resilient, and more autonomous robotic explorers. The great lesson of the deep is that our direct, real-time control is an impossible dream. The future, therefore, belongs to the machines that can think for themselves. The next generation of autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, will be more than just pre-programmed mappers. They will be true robotic scientists, equipped with a form of artificial intelligence that allows them to make their own decisions in the dark. Imagine an AUV on a mission in an unexplored trench. Its sensors detect a plume of unusual chemicals wafting from a crack in the seafloor, a sign of a potential hydrothermal vent. Instead of simply noting the data and continuing on its pre-planned route, the vehicle's own software recognizes the significance of the discovery. It can choose to pause its survey and begin a slow, careful spiral pattern around the plume, homing in on its source, its cameras and chemical sensors gathering precious, high-resolution data on this unexpected and beautiful new discovery. This is adaptive autonomy, and it will turn our robotic explorers from simple surveyors into true, inquisitive partners in the process of discovery. The challenge of communication is also being met with quiet and beautiful ingenuity. While the speed of sound remains a fundamental limit, engineers are developing smarter ways to use it. Acoustic networks, a GPS of the deep, are being created, where a constellation of small, autonomous buoys on the surface can work together to provide more accurate and reliable positioning for vehicles on the seafloor. Instead of a single, uncertain line of communication to one ship, a submersible could be in constant, quiet conversation with a whole team of listeners. Its position triangulated with a precision that was once thought impossible. And for those moments when a vast amount of data needs to be sent home, a new and delicate technology offers a beautiful solution. Hair-thin fiber optic micro-tethers. These are not the heavy, armored umbilicals of traditional ROVs, but spools of incredibly fine glass fiber that a vehicle can unspool behind it for a temporary, high-bandwidth connection. An AUV that has spent a week gathering terabytes of high-definition video could rendezvous with a small, stationary mailbox on the seafloor, plug in for a few minutes, and upload its entire story in a brilliant and silent burst of light, before severing the connection and returning to its quiet, autonomous work. It is a solution that is as elegant as it is practical. The human journey, too, is becoming more sustainable. The design of crewed submersibles is converging on a model of quiet and proven reliability, the strong, perfect sphere of titanium. But around this core, innovations are flourishing. New, pressure-tolerant batteries are extending the duration of dives, allowing for more precious hours of observation on the bottom. New, more sensitive imaging systems are allowing pilots and scientists to see the deep world in colors and details that were previously invisible. And new, more delicate sampling arms are being designed to interact with the fragile life of the abyss with a gentler and more respectful touch. Perhaps the most beautiful and promising vision for the future lies in the idea of a permanent, networked presence in the deep. Imagine a series of autonomous seafloor observatories, landers, connected by a thin, fiber-optic cable, deployed along the length of the Mariana Trench. These quiet, sleepless sentinels would sit on the bottom for years, their instruments patiently monitoring the deep in a way that no fleeting expedition ever could. They would feel the subtle tremors of the earth. They would taste the shifting chemistry of the water. They would hear the distant songs of the whales, and their high-definition cameras would patiently watch for the rare and beautiful moments of deep-sea life. The arrival of a whale fall, the slow growth of a microbial mat, the silent, ghostly dance of the Hadal snailfish. This deep-sea internet would not be for entertainment. It would be a permanent scientific eye, streaming its quiet and profound data back to laboratories on land in real time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It would transform our understanding of the deep from a collection of snapshots into a continuous, flowing film. This is the great dream of modern oceanography. It is a vision that is still on the distant horizon, a monumental undertaking that would require a new era of global cooperation and investment. But it is a dream that is slowly and quietly moving toward the realm of the possible. In this future, our exploration of the deep will be less a story of heroic, singular descents, and more a story of a quiet, constant, and collaborative presence. We will become not just visitors to the abyss, but residents, our awareness extended into the deepest and most silent corners of our own planet, in a way that is both humble and profoundly and beautifully powerful. The deep ocean trenches, those profound and silent wounds in the Earth's crust, are not just geological features. They are a kind of sanctuary. For eons, they have been the last great refuge on our planet, a world insulated from the dramatic and often violent changes that have swept across the sunlit surface. While ice ages have come and gone, while continents have drifted, and while great extinction events have reshaped the face of the land and the shallow seas, the Hadal Zone has remained a place of almost unimaginable stability. This is the realm of the living fossils, a quiet, dark, and gentle cradle where some of life's most ancient and resilient forms have endured. To descend into a deep ocean trench is, in a very real sense, to travel backward in time. The conditions here, the crushing pressure, the near-freezing temperatures, and the absolute absence of light have remained virtually unchanged for tens and perhaps hundreds of millions of years. This incredible stability has created a unique evolutionary environment. On the surface, where environments change rapidly, evolution often favors speed, adaptability, and innovation. But in the deep, where the rules of the game have not changed since time immemorial, evolution has favored a different set of virtues: efficiency, patience, and a quiet and beautiful minimalism. The creatures of the Hadal Zone are masters of this ancient art. Their slow metabolisms, their delicate, energy-saving bodies, and their patient, scavenging lifestyles are not a sign of primitive simplicity, but of a profound and perfected adaptation to a world where stability is the only constant. They have had no need to evolve the bright colors of the coral reef or the powerful legs of the savanna hunter because their world has never demanded it. They have, instead, achieved a kind of quiet, evolutionary perfection. In these deep and silent refuges, we find creatures that belong to some of the most ancient and unchanged lineages on Earth. The ghostly snailfish, while highly specialized for pressure, is a member of a broader family of fish that has been thriving in the deep for many millions of years. The ubiquitous amphipods are part of a crustacean lineage that is hundreds of millions of years old, and the microbes that form the base of this entire ecosystem are the direct descendants of some of the earliest and most resilient forms of life to ever appear on our planet. The Hadal Zone is a living library of deep time, its inhabitants the quiet and enduring keepers of ancient genetic stories. This profound stability has made the trenches a sanctuary during times of global catastrophe. The great mass extinction event that wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago, likely triggered by a massive asteroid impact, would have had devastating and immediate effects on the surface world. The skies would have darkened, photosynthesis would have ceased, and food chains on land and in the shallow seas would have collapsed. But in the deep ocean, in the silent, perpetual night of the trenches, the immediate effects would have been much less dramatic. The creatures of the Hadal Zone were already adapted to a life without sunlight, a life of scarcity, a life dependent on the slow, patient rain of detritus from above. When that rain of marine snow faltered or stopped for a time, it would have certainly created a period of extreme famine. But the very slowness of life in the deep, the low metabolisms, the ability to endure long periods without food, would have given many of these creatures a profound survival advantage. While the world above was burning, freezing, and starving, the deep ocean trenches may have acted as quiet, steadfast arcs, preserving ancient lineages that might otherwise have been lost forever. There is a serene and beautiful irony in this thought. The most extreme and seemingly inhospitable environment on our planet may, in fact, be one of its most stable and protective sanctuaries. Its very isolation, its insulation by 11 kilometers of water from the chaotic and ever-changing world of the surface, is its greatest strength. This role, as a deep-time refuge, gives the exploration of the Hadal Zone a sense of profound and almost sacred importance. Every new creature we discover, every new microbe we identify, is not just a biological curiosity, it is a potential link to a past that we thought was lost to the fossil record. These are not just species, they are survivors, the quiet, humble victors of a game of endurance that has lasted for an almost unimaginable length of time. To look upon a Hadal snailfish, with its ghostly, translucent body and its slow, undulating movements, is to look upon a creature that is, in a very real sense, a living fossil. Its body plan, its chemistry, its very way of being are a window into a kind of life that has persisted almost unchanged, while the world above has been in a constant state of evolutionary flux. The Hadal trenches are not just a geographical frontier, they are a temporal one, a place where the deep, slow rhythms of ancient Earth can still be felt, a quiet and profound echo of a time before our own. And the protection of these unique and irreplaceable sanctuaries, these quiet, dark libraries of deep time, becomes a duty not just of science, but of our entire species, for in them lies a record of our own planet's resilience, a silent testament to the enduring and patient power of life itself. Our journey to the deepest part of the ocean is not just a descent into a world of strange creatures and quiet physics. It is also, in a beautiful and surprising way, a journey into the human heart, the call of the abyss, the lure of this ultimate unknown, has a unique and powerful pull on a certain kind of spirit. It is a call that has been answered by a small, remarkable, and diverse group of individuals, scientists, engineers, and adventurers who have dedicated their lives to the quiet and patient pursuit of this most challenging of frontiers. Their personal stories are as much a part of the exploration of the deep as are the titanium spheres and the robotic arms. To choose to descend into Challenger Deep is to make a profound and personal commitment. It is an act of incredible trust, trust in the physics, trust in the engineering, and trust in the small, dedicated team on the surface that is your only fragile link to the world of light. For the handful of pilots and explorers who have made this journey, the hours spent in the tiny, cramped crew sphere, descending through the endless, crushing dark, are a time of intense and quiet focus. There is a deep, meditative quality to the descent, a slow and patient letting go of the familiar world, a surrender to the immense and beautiful power of the ocean. James Cameron, the second person to make a solo dive to the bottom, spoke of the experience with a sense of almost spiritual awe. He described the final descent into the trench as a journey into a place of lunar-like desolation and complete isolation, a place where one feels a sense of connection to the planet and to the great, long history of life. It is not a place of fear, but of profound and solitary wonder. For him, the journey was the culmination of a lifelong dream, a passion that drove him to push the boundaries of both filmmaking and deep-sea engineering, a testament to the power of a single, focused human will. Dr. Don Walsh, one of the original two pioneers who first reached the bottom in 1960, has spent his life since as a quiet and steadfast advocate for ocean exploration. His journey in the Trieste times was a moment of brave and almost reckless improvisation at the very edge of what was technologically possible. He and Jacques Picard heard a loud crack on their way down the outer pane of their acrylic viewport, succumbing to the pressure. They made the quiet, courageous decision to continue, trusting in the strength of their inner hull. His story is one of calm and understated bravery, a quiet but profound embodiment of the spirit of early exploration. More recently, the expeditions of the Limiting Factor have been led by explorer Victor Vescovo, a former naval officer and private equity investor who brought a new and systematic approach to the endeavor. His ambition was not just to reach the deepest point, but to do so repeatedly, safely, and to open the door of the submersible to the scientific community. His project, the 5 Deeps expedition, was a masterpiece of logistics and endurance, and in its success, it transformed Hadal exploration from a singular or heroic act into a sustained and collaborative scientific campaign. His story is one of quiet determination, of meticulous planning, and of a deep and personal desire to turn a place of myth into a place of knowledge. And among the scientists who have made the journey is Dr. Kathy Sullivan, a figure whose life seems to bridge every great frontier. She was the first American woman to walk in space, and in 2020, she became the first woman to dive to Challenger Deep. She is the only human in history to have been to both of these extreme and otherworldly environments. Her story is one of boundless curiosity, a quiet and profound refusal to accept any horizon, whether it be in the vacuum of space or the crushing darkness of the deep ocean. These individuals, and the handful of others who have shared this rare experience, are the human face of deep-sea exploration. Their stories remind us that science is not just an abstract pursuit of data. It is a deeply human endeavor, driven by passion, by wonder, and by a quiet, personal need to know what lies beyond the edge of our own small, familiar world. To descend into Challenger Deep is to willingly and joyfully place yourself at the very mercy of the planet, to trust in the beautiful and unforgiving laws of physics, and to come back with a story that is not just about a place, but about a perspective, a new and more humble understanding of our own small, precious, and beautiful place in the universe. Our story has so far been a human one, a tale of our own endeavors and our own limitations in a world that seems almost willfully hidden from us. But there is another, much older and quieter story of exploration unfolding in the deep ocean, one that has been going on for hundreds of millions of years. It is the story of life's own patient and persistent journey into the abyss, a slow and beautiful migration that has populated every corner of this dark and pressurized kingdom. The first true explorers of the deep were not human beings in titanium spheres, but humble, resilient creatures, driven by the quiet and universal impulse to find new homes and new ways of being. The colonization of the deep sea was not a sudden invasion, but a slow and gradual descent, an evolutionary journey that likely took place over countless generations. Life began in the sunlit shallows, and for billions of years, it stayed there, basking in the warmth and the energy of the Sunday. But as competition in this crowded world grew, some creatures began to venture into the dimmer, deeper waters of the twilight zone. This was a challenging new frontier, a place of perpetual dusk and dwindling food. But it was also a place of opportunity, with fewer predators and new ecological niches to be filled. To survive here, life had to learn a new set of tricks. It learned to see in the dim light, developing huge, sensitive eyes. It learned to make its own light, evolving the beautiful and complex chemistry of bioluminescence. And it learned to be efficient, to make the most of every rare and precious meal that drifted down from the sunlit world above. The creatures of the Twilight Zone were the first pioneers of the deep, and their adaptations paved the way for the even more arduous journey into the darkness below. From the Twilight Zone, life continued its slow descent, step by step, into the utter blackness of the Midnight Zone, and then onto the vast, cold, and lonely plains of the abyss. Each new layer of depth presented a new set of challenges, particularly the immense and ever-increasing pressure. But evolution is a patient and endlessly creative problem solver. Creatures evolved bodies that were not designed to fight the pressure, but to yield to it. They developed soft, gelatinous tissues that were nearly incompressible. They fine-tuned their internal chemistry, evolving special molecules like TMAO to protect their proteins from being crushed. They did not conquer the deep, they became part of it. This slow and beautiful migration eventually reached the deepest and most isolated places on Earth, the Hadal Trenches. It is a profound and almost poetic thought that these lonely canyons, for all their extremes, were not empty when we first arrived. Life was already there, waiting for us in the dark. The ghostly snailfish, the swarms of amphipods, the teeming communities of pressure-loving microbes, these are not recent arrivals. They are the descendants of ancient and incredibly resilient lineages that have been living in this hidden world for millions of years. Their story is a testament to the quiet, unstoppable, and opportunistic nature of life itself. Life does not just thrive in the easy places. It seeks out the margins. It tests the boundaries. It finds a way to make a home in even the most seemingly hostile of environments. The very existence of a vibrant ecosystem at the bottom of Challenger Deep is perhaps the most beautiful and hopeful discovery in all of oceanography. It tells us that life's reach is far greater than we ever imagined, and that our own planet is even more wondrous and more resilient than it appears. These deep ecosystems have evolved in a state of almost perfect isolation, not just from the surface world, but often from each other. Each trench can be thought of as a separate island of deep-sea life, and the creatures within it have often evolved into unique species that are found nowhere else on Earth. This endemism is a beautiful reflection of life's creativity. Given isolation and enough time, life will always diversify, finding new and beautiful solutions to the ancient challenges of survival. To be an observer of this deep and ancient story is to feel a sense of profound and beautiful kinship. We, the late-coming explorers in our metal spheres, are following a path that was first blazed millions of years ago by the slow, patient, and utterly silent migrations of these humble and extraordinary creatures. We are not the first to journey into the abyss. We are simply the most recent, and the first to come back with a story to tell in a language of our own. The true pioneers of the deep were the creatures that learned to call it home, and their quiet, enduring presence in the darkness is a beautiful and humbling testament to the irrepressible power of life itself. Our voyage into the deep, dark heart of the ocean has been a journey through a world of humbling superlatives, the greatest pressures, the most profound darkness, the most elusive creatures. But to truly understand the character of the deep, we must appreciate not just its extremes, but its influence. The deep ocean is not a separate, disconnected kingdom, locked away at the bottom of the world. It is a vast and silent engine, a quiet and patient force that shapes the entire planet, from the air we breathe to the climate we experience. The abyss is not a remote wilderness. It is the deep, slow heartbeat of our living world. Let us begin with the great, unseen rivers of the deep, far beneath the sunlit, wind-driven currents of the surface. The deep ocean is in constant, slow-motion circulation. This process, known as the thermohaline circulation or the global ocean conveyor belt, is driven by subtle differences in the temperature and salinity of the water. In the cold polar regions, particularly in the North Atlantic and near Antarctica, the surface water becomes very cold and very salty as sea ice forms, leaving the salt behind. This cold, salty water is denser than the water around it, and so it sinks. This sinking is a slow, majestic, and powerful cascade, a waterfall of cold water plunging for kilometers into the abyss. Once at the bottom, this dense water begins a long and patient journey, creeping along the seafloor, carrying oxygen and nutrients from the surface into the deepest parts of the ocean. This great underwater river can take 1,000 years to complete one full circuit of the globe, flowing from the Atlantic, past the southern tip of Africa, through the Indian Ocean, and finally into the vast expanse of the Pacific. As it travels, it slowly warms and mixes, eventually rising back to the surface in different parts of the world, where the cycle begins anew. This deep circulation is the planet's primary climate regulator. It is a vast and slow-moving heat engine, transporting the cold of the poles toward the equator and the warmth of the tropics back toward the poles. It smooths out the planet's temperature extremes, creating the relatively stable and gentle global climate that has allowed our own civilization to flourish. Without this constant, quiet, and deep-seated motion, the world's climates would be far more volatile. A world of scorching tropics and brutally frozen poles, with little of the temperate middle ground we now take for granted. The deep ocean is also the Earth's largest and most important carbon reservoir. The oceans as a whole hold about 50 times more carbon than the atmosphere, and it is the deep sea that acts as the long-term storage vault for this immense inventory. Carbon dioxide from the atmosphere dissolves in the surface waters, where it is taken up by phytoplankton. When these microscopic organisms die, a fraction of their carbon-rich bodies sinks into the deep, a process known as the biological pump. This slow, gentle, and constant rain of organic matter carries carbon from the fast-moving cycles of the surface world down into the slow, quiet, and stable repository of the deep. Once there, that carbon can be stored for centuries or even millennia, locked away from the atmosphere, unable to contribute to the greenhouse effect. The Hadal trenches, the very deepest parts of this system, are now understood to be particularly effective carbon sinks. Their unique, funnel-like geography and their active geological nature seem to enhance the process of carbon burial. The deep ocean is not just a passive container. It is an active and crucial player in regulating our planet's atmospheric chemistry and long-term climate. The quiet, hidden world of the deep is also the ultimate source of nourishment for many of the ocean's great fisheries. The slow, upwelling currents that bring the cold, deep, and nutrient-rich waters back to the surface are the lifeblood of some of the most productive marine ecosystems on Earth. The great anchovy fisheries, off the coast of Peru, for example, are fueled entirely by the nutrients that have been slowly accumulating in the deep Pacific for centuries. In this sense, the fish on our plates are a direct and tangible gift from the unseen, silent, and slow-moving world of the abyss. To think of the deep ocean in this way is to see it not as a remote and alien void, but as the quiet, foundational, and indispensable heart of our entire planetary system. Its slow and patient rhythms set the cadence for our climate. Its deep and silent chemistry regulates the air we breathe, and its hidden and ancient nutrients fuel the very life that sustains us. The surface world, with all its vibrant color and frantic activity, is in a very real and profound sense just the beautiful and sunlit froth on the surface of a much deeper, much slower, and much more powerful reality. Our fate is inextricably and quietly tied to the health and the stability of this hidden world. And this, perhaps, is the final and most compelling reason why we must strive, with all our ingenuity and our humility, to continue our slow and patient journey of its exploration. Our descent into the quiet and beautiful world of the deep has been a journey of ever-increasing wonder and also of ever-deepening humility. We have faced the silent, immense challenge of pressure, the frustrating solitude of lost communication, and the sobering reality of the immense financial and logistical hurdles that guard this last great frontier. We have glimpsed the strange and resilient life that thrives in the eternal dark, and we have begun to appreciate the profound and patient influence of the abyss on the entire planetary system. And now, as our imagined submersible begins its long, slow ascent back towards the world of light, it is time for us to ask a final, quiet question. What is the true value of this exploration? Why do we feel this gentle but persistent pull to know what lies at the bottom of our own world? On the surface, the answers may seem practical. We explore the deep to discover new resources, to find new chemical compounds that might lead to new medicines, or to understand the geological forces that drive earthquakes and tsunamis. And these are indeed worthy and important goals. The strange pressure-adapted microbes of the Hadal Zone are a treasure trove of unique biochemical innovations, a genetic library that may one day yield enzymes and compounds of immense value. And a deeper understanding of the processes at work in subduction zones could, one day, help us better predict and prepare for the seismic hazards that threaten our coastal communities. But the true value of exploring the deep ocean, I believe, lies in something quieter, something less tangible, and something far more profound. We journey to the bottom of the sea for the same reason we journey to the distant stars. We do it for the perspective, to know that there is a world 11 kilometers beneath our feet, a world of crushing pressure, of absolute darkness, and of life that plays by an entirely different set of rules, is to be gently and beautifully humbled. It is a powerful antidote to our own human-centric view of the world. It reminds us that our sunlit, one-atmosphere existence is not the default, but a rare and precious exception, a thin and fragile veneer on the surface of a planet that is, for the most part, a cold, dark, and high-pressure world. To appreciate the deep is to appreciate, with a newfound sense of awe, the profound and beautiful gift of the shallow. This journey also reconnects us to a sense of mystery. In our modern age, a time of instant information and global connectivity, it can sometimes feel as though there are no blank spaces left on the map, no true unknowns. We have mapped the continents, we have scaled the highest mountains, and we have peered to the very edge of the observable universe, and yet the deep ocean remains. It is a quiet and persistent reminder that our knowledge is incomplete, that our world still holds secrets, and that the age of discovery is far from over. This is a beautiful and vital thing. To have a true mystery, a true frontier, is to keep our collective sense of curiosity and our capacity for wonder alive. And finally, the exploration of the deep is a journey into a deeper understanding of life itself. The discovery of vibrant ecosystems in the Hadal Zone, thriving in a world without sunlight, has fundamentally rewritten our definition of what is possible for biology. Life, it seems, is far more resilient, far more creative, and far more tenacious than we had ever dreamed. To find it flourishing at the very limits of our planet, in a place that we once thought to be a sterile void, is to be given a profound sense of hope. If life can make a home in the crushing darkness of Challenger Deep, then where else in the universe might its quiet and persistent chemistry have taken root? The exploration of our own deep ocean is, in a very real sense, the first and most important step in our search for life elsewhere in the cosmos. And so, as our submersible rises through the water column, and the profound black of the abyss slowly gives way to the deep, ethereal blues of the midnight and the twilight zones, and finally to the bright, familiar, and life-giving light of the surface, we bring back with us more than just samples and data. we bring back a new and more complete picture of our own world. It is a world that is stranger, more beautiful, and more mysterious than we knew. It is a world where the quiet and patient forces of the deep are the true and silent architects of the surface we call home. And it is a world where we, for all our ambition and all our knowledge, are still just beginning our long and quiet journey of understanding. The greatest and most enduring treasure that we bring back from the bottom of the ocean, in the end, is a deeper and more humble appreciation for the beautiful and mysterious planet we are so fortunate to inhabit. Our journey into the silent, deep heart of the ocean now comes to its gentle close. We have descended through a world of increasing pressure and fading light, from the sun-drenched surface to the crushing, eternal darkness of the Hadal Zone. We have marveled at the quiet and beautiful resilience of the life that calls this abyss home, and we have been humbled by the immense and overlapping challenges of physics, of finance, of logistics, and of our own limited perspective that make this the last truly unexplored frontier on our own planet. And now, as our imagined submersible breaks the surface and bobs gently on the familiar waves, we return to our world with a new and more profound sense of what it means to be a quiet observer. We began with a question: why can't we truly explore the ocean? And the answer, we have found, is as deep and as layered as the ocean itself. We are kept from the abyss not by a single, insurmountable wall, but by a beautiful and complex tapestry of challenges. We are limited by the immense and patient power of pressure, a force that demands a perfection in our engineering that is almost absolute. We are limited by the very nature of water itself, a medium that swallows our signals and enforces a profound and humbling silence of communication. We are limited by the sheer, practical, and immense cost and difficulty of operating in a realm that is so remote and so unforgiving. But more than anything, we are limited by a difference in rhythm. The deep ocean operates on a timescale that is geological, its most important stories unfolding not in hours or days, but in seasons of deep, quiet waiting, and in rare, transformative moments of catastrophic change. We are, for now, fleeting visitors to a kingdom of ancient and patient permanence. Our inability to explore it truly, in its entirety and on its own terms, is not a failure. It is a quiet and beautiful lesson in humility. And yet, in the face of these immense and gentle barriers, our curiosity endures. The faint and haunting images from Challenger Deep, the discovery of a ghostly snailfish at the very edge of the possible, the quiet hum of the planet's own heartbeat, recorded in its deepest chamber, these small and precious whispers from the abyss are a powerful and irresistible call. They remind us that the world is still full of wonder, still full of secrets, and that the greatest and most beautiful journeys are often the ones that are the most difficult. As you now settle deeper into your own quiet harbor of rest, let the immense and serene stillness of the deep ocean be a gentle companion to your thoughts. Imagine the absolute and peaceful darkness, a quiet that is broken only by the faint, cold fire of a bioluminescent creature, or the slow, patient drift of marine snow. Imagine the great, slow-moving river of the global conveyor belt, the silent, planet-sized heartbeat that regulates our world's climate. And imagine the profound and beautiful truth that even in this most extreme and seemingly hostile of environments, life, in its quiet and humble resilience, has found a way to make a home. The deep ocean is not a place of monsters and of fear. It is a place of wonder, of stability, and of profound and beautiful peace. It is the quiet, hidden heart of our living planet, and to know that it is there, in all its mystery and all its majesty, is to feel a deeper and more complete connection to the beautiful and fragile blue marble we are so fortunate to inhabit. May that thought bring you a sense of calm, a sense of perspective, and a sense of profound and gentle awe. The story of the deep ocean is a story of patience, of silence, and of the quiet, enduring power of a world we may never fully know, but can always, and forever, wonder about.